I used to say we're family like it was an infinite credit line, a phrase that turned hard things soft and made numbers on a screen feel less real. It started with one favor, one car note, 1 month. Just until I land something, my older brother, Ryan, said. I believed him because that's what you do when you share a roof, a last name, and a childhood where you split the last orange popsicle by a millimeter to keep it fair. I was 26, a year into my project coordinator role at a mid-sized healthcare tech firm outside Charlotte. I'd moved into a small one-bedroom off Independence Boulevard because it offered decent rent and just enough sunlight to make my pothos think life was good. I had a plan, 12 months of a high-yield savings account, a strict spreadsheet, and then an FHA pre-approval with a 3.5% down payment on a starter condo. Nothing fancy, just a place where the knobs matched and the neighbors only knocked for packages. Ryan was 32, and between jobs. Just a gap, he called it. He'd been good once. Inside sales, 2 promotions, tight polos and tighter deadlines. Then his team got cut in a reorg, and 3 months turned into a season, and a season seeped into trying to find the right fit. He was staying with our parents on the other side of town, where the familiar creak of the hallway floorboards made everything sound like the past. Dad had opinions, Mom had casseroles, and nobody wanted to say the word slump out loud. The first time I sent a payment for Ryan's car note, it was because the alternative was repossession. It'll tank my credit, and I've got 2 interviews next week. He sounded small in a way I remembered from when we were kids, and he broke Mom's wedding frame. I told myself it was triage, not routine. I set up a one-time payment from my checking account and labeled it in my spreadsheet with a star, as if it were special, the kind of star you give to a temporary thing. He thanked me. He promised me dinner when things pick up. He asked me if I could spot the insurance, too, just for this month. I won't lie, the second time, I didn't think as hard. If you've ever held a family member's panic in your hands, you know how heavy it gets. At first, no one in the family asked questions. It's amazing what silence cosigns when the story is, we're fine. Then Mom said gently, you're such a blessing to your brother, the way a person might say you're a good driver or a kind neighbor. Dad stayed quieter. He took Ryan to the DMV once and said nothing to me, except, you're doing a good thing. Or maybe he said, you're doing the thing we don't want to do. The month I hit $9,000 in my savings, halfway to my down payment range, once I added closing costs and an emergency buffer, I bought myself a $4 latte and a cheap bouquet at the grocery store. I placed the flowers next to the printed spreadsheet on my fridge. Row by row, I had documented each transfer, each payday, each small indulgence I permitted with a note that said, reward. My future condo was a checklist, 2BR, 1.5 BA, in-unit laundry, HOA under $300. Every box I checked in real life made that list feel less like fiction. Hey, can I use your Zelle to shoot the car note? Ryan texted that night. Mine's over to the daily limit. It felt small and practical, and I was in my robe about to exfoliate, and he'd only need it once. I logged in on his iPad while we were at Mom and Dad's, did the transfer, logged out, and handed it back. I thought I was being a good sister and a cautious user. 2 things can be true until they aren't. I slept the way you sleep when you've convinced yourself that giving doesn't have gravity. But even then, I think a part of me felt the tilt. Because favors have a way of multiplying in the dark, and the thing about down payments is they don't care why you paused. They only care that you did. Job hunts always sound active, even when they're mostly waiting. Ryan's calendar looked full if you didn't tap the boxes. Screening reschedule, touch base next week, a ghost of a pipeline that never flowed. He started picking up gig work. Weekend warehouse shifts, a temp assignment calling lapsed customers about free trials. Every 2 weeks he'd say, I'm close, and sometimes he stood straighter when he said it, like confidence could co-sign an offer letter. My spreadsheet did the opposite. The car note Ryan row appeared monthly, then it brought friends, insurance, a late fee, a tire, a just this once for his phone bill because he missed an autopay window, and they'll cut it off, Steph, I can't miss messages if a recruiter calls. I wasn't a martyr. I said no sometimes when it felt easy, and yes when it didn't. I told myself all the old family stories. We don't keep score. Money comes back. One day, he'll be the one spotting me when I need it. I also told myself new stories about self-preservation. Down payment funds live in the savings account that never touches checking. I even opened a separate high-yield savings account at a different bank so my condo money and my day-to-day weren't in the same room. At dinner, Mom started opening conversations with, "We're so proud of you, Stephanie," her eyes soft in a way that made me feel 6 and heroic. Dad would ask about interest rates like a man who used to read the business section before the sports page. "FHA still a thing?" "Yeah," I'd say. "It's a thing." We didn't talk about closing costs. We didn't talk about how many months of reserves lenders like to see. We didn't talk about how much I'd already paid toward a car I didn't drive. You can thread a needle through what a family ignores. I hit $15,000 in savings and put a small sticker next to the line on my fridge that read, "Down payment." I'd made a mood board for the condo. A pale sage paint chip, a photo of a reclaimed wood table, a screenshot of a sunny balcony I'd never sit on but kept anyway. I permitted myself to scroll condo listings for 15 minutes a night. I saved a 2-bedroom in a neighborhood with walkable sidewalks and a diner that served pancakes after midnight. I could almost hear the echo of my keys in my own hallway. Ryan said, "Quick thing over coffee one Sunday. Can you keep that Zelle handy if I need to push an insurance payment? Mine still has that weird limit." I told him I'd do it if I were there in person. He nodded, said no problem, and changed the subject to the Panthers, like we needed air. I didn't log in on his iPad again. I didn't think I needed to say why. The next week, he called me at 9:30, voice thin. "The car note's due. I swear I'll Venmo you Friday." I did the transfer from my phone in my own kitchen, where my plants were finally thriving, and thought about how "I swear" sounds like an IOU even when it's a promise. I want to say I saw it coming, that somewhere inside the throat of this situation I could hear the future clearing. But it felt like standing in the ocean up to your waist. You feel the pull, you know a wave is forming, but the drop doesn't look like a drop until you're under it. I added a new line to the spreadsheet called stopgap. I told myself it meant my help was temporary, a practical patch on a temporary problem. But the only true thing about stopgaps is that they leak under pressure, and people leak too when they're tired. 2 weeks later, I logged into my savings to admire the numbers the way some people admire vacation photos. Then I saw something that didn't belong. And all the air went out of my pretty little future in a single ugly sound. There's a particular flavor of dread when the numbers don't add up, and you know they should. My savings balance, my down payment, was $5,000 lower than it had been 2 days prior. I blinked. I refreshed. I checked if I'd mistyped the account. Then I saw the line items. 2 ACH transfers out to entities with names that read like Last Stands. The memos said settlement. One looked like a collections firm. The other looked like a debt buyer. My hands went cold, like I'd put them against the freezer coil. I checked my checking account. Clean. Savings, cratered. I went to linked accounts, and my throat did that thing where it finds a new shape. An external account had been authorized 2 weeks ago. The last 4 digits I didn't recognize, listed as funding source. Under device history, a login from an iPad in our parents' zip code glowed like a siren. My body went still, the way a deer goes still when the woods fall silent. I called the bank. I said the words I never thought I'd say. There are unauthorized transfers from my savings. The rep was calm, like this was page 3 of the script. She asked about two-factor codes. She asked if anyone else had access to my devices. She asked if I ever logged into my account on another device. I closed my eyes and saw myself on Ryan's iPad the way I'd told myself I never would again. "We can lock the account, file a dispute, and start a fraud affidavit," she said. "We'll investigate. Funds may be provisionally credited if we determine they meet criteria." I heard the part where she said maybe. I heard the part where time is a cliff you sit on while someone else decides if you fall. I hung up and went to the 3 credit bureaus' websites like a person who'd practiced in a dream. I placed a credit freeze on my reports. I placed fraud alerts. I changed every password, every bit of two-factor, and turned off push approvals on any device that wasn't in my hands. I moved what remained of my down payment to a new bank where none of my family had ever borrowed a charger from me at the dinner table. I set transaction alerts to paranoid. Then I did the thing that made it real. I pulled my brother's name up in my text thread and typed, "We need to talk now." Before he answered, I did one more thing. I checked the county's public records for civil filings with his name, a skill I wish I didn't have. The debts I knew were out there. Old credit card slime he said he was handling, a payday thing from a bad week 3 years ago, had 2 new stamps. Paid in full. He texted back, "In 10, what's up?" like I'd asked about brunch. "Was your iPad on my bank on the 12th? Did you authorize transfers from my savings?" I typed. "Staff, slow down, let's talk," he wrote. Then a second text, "I fixed stuff, you'll get it back." I could feel the curve of my future condo, the balcony with the late-night pancakes, the sticker on my fridge that said down payment, all of it becoming a ghost in the corner of my kitchen. Mom called right then because she has that sense. "Everything okay?" she asked, without hello. "No," I said, and my voice broke on the vowel. "It's not." When Ryan walked into my apartment that night, he wouldn't look at my fridge. He stared at the floor the way he used to when Dad asked, "Who dented the garage door with a basketball?" Shame has a posture. So does entitlement. They can look like twins if you don't look closely. "I was gonna put it back," he said, and the past tense cracked him open like a weak seam. I asked him how, I asked him when, I asked him what gave him the right. I did not yell. There's a quiet that is worse than yelling, and I handed it to him like a mirror. He said, "Family helps family," and I said, "Family doesn't pick locks." "He's ashamed. He'll make it right," Mom said, and her voice did that mother thing, wrapping razor wire in velvet. "I'm ashamed of what I let this become." Ryan kept his face down, then looked up with that earnest, boyish plea that works on teachers and aunts and anybody who prefers hope over patterns. "Give me time," he said. "I'll hustle. I'll pick up shifts. "No more promises," I said. "Paper." He blinked. "What?" "Promissory note," I said, "in writing. For the full amount you moved from my savings, plus the overdraft fees I ate juggling your just this once bills. Signed, notarized. A schedule with due dates, amounts, and a late fee clause. And you'll acknowledge on paper that these transfers were unauthorized. If you miss a payment by more than 15 days, I will file in small claims. If you try to contact me about money anywhere but in writing, I stop the conversation. If you so much as touch an account that has my name on it, I will file a police report. This is not punishment. This is a boundary." Mom covered her mouth. Dad stared at the table like the wood grains might spell out a gentler solution. Ryan's jaw flexed in that way that says, "This isn't how I pictured the scene where you forgive me." "That's harsh," he said finally. "It's adult," I said. "And for what it's worth, it's forgiving. If I weren't forgiving, I'd skip the note and go straight to the police with the affidavit I already filed at the bank." "You filed? Steph," Mom said, like I'd set a house on fire. "It could save me. And this is the part I need you both to hear, because it's the one I didn't know how to say at 12 or 18 or 23. I am not your bank. I am not your insurer. I am not the emergency exit on your poor planning. I'm your daughter. I'm your sister. And I can be those things kindly and still keep every dollar I need to build a home no one can pick the lock on." Silence, the kind that rearranged furniture. 48 hours, I said, standing. "I'll email the terms tonight. We sign at the notary tomorrow or the next. After 48 hours, I proceed without you." Dad exhaled like a car losing air. "Steph," he said, "we hear you." He put a hand on Ryan's shoulder. "Son?" Ryan nodded once, a jerky movement made of pride and panic. "Send it," he said. At home, I drafted the promissory note with bulletproof, boring language. Names, dates, totals. A repayment calendar that even a half-asleep version of us could follow. A clause that said any dispute would be resolved in the county court. A statement where he acknowledged linking a foreign account to my savings without my consent, and a paragraph that meant the world to me. This agreement is a condition of continued relationship. I stared at that last line for a long time, then left it in. When I hit send, my hands shook, not from fear, from relief. 2 hours later, my bank emailed, "We've received your affidavit. Investigation initiated. Provisional credit may post within 10 business days." I read it twice. Then I put a fresh sticker on my fridge, right over the old one that had started to peel. This one said, "Boundaries." I didn't sleep that night, but it wasn't the panicky, chasing your tail kind of insomnia. It was the kind where your mind takes inventory and puts labels on things that used to be in a junk drawer. I wrote 3 lists on a yellow pad. List 1. Safeguards. Credit freezes at all 3 bureaus. Fraud alerts are active. New bank for down payment funds. No shared devices. No remembered logins. Passwords changed. 2 factors set to app-based codes only. Alerts for any transfer over $50. Separate email for financial accounts that no one else has ever seen. A rule: never log into personal banking on any device that isn't mine in a home that isn't mine. If we needed to move family money, we'd do it on paper with receipts. List 2. Boundaries. No cash loans. If I ever choose to help in the future, it would be by direct payment to a third party with a cap and a one-time written agreement. No is a complete sentence, and let me think is a bridge I can use when no feels like jumping into a cold pool. Money conversations would happen via email, so the archive could outlast everyone's best spin. I can love you and still say no would be my mantra, not my apology. List 3. Recovery. Rebuilding the down payment if the provisional credit didn't land. Picking up a freelance project or 2. Pausing streaming services that didn't spark joy. Switching my phone plan to a cheaper tier. And packing lunches for a month because those $10 salads were a slow leak in a boat that needed to float. Booking a meeting with a loan officer to ask what documentation would reassure underwriting after a fraud claim. Better to know now than invent a story later. "Proud of you," my friend Leah texted back after I sent her a photo of the lists. "Boundary queen." Also, no shame in therapy to unlearn the "I am responsible for everyone" script. "Already emailed my EAP," I typed. It felt like setting up guardrails on a road I planned to drive for the rest of my life. Ryan didn't respond to my email that night, which I expected. Shame keeps late hours, and so does avoidance. The next morning he replied, "I'll sign. Don't need interest to punish me, I get it. But I will pay late fees if I mess up. Send notary address." Mom's reply was a novella of worry and rationale and old stories about the time Ryan used his allowance to buy me a field trip t-shirt in 6th grade because I had lost mine. I read it all, felt my throat go wobbly, and then typed, "I'm available for hugs and dinner. I'm unavailable for changing the terms." At the notary, a storefront between a dry cleaner and a tax prep place decorated with fake ferns, we sat side by side, our knees almost touching but not quite. The notary was a woman about our mother's age, with glasses on a chain and a stamp that thudded like a gavel. She watched us sign, her eyes moving from paper to faces, the way a person watches a couple sign a prenup, which, in a way, we were. The marriage and divorce of an unhealthy financial entanglement. "I'm sorry," he said. "The real kind, the kind you aim at your own chest first. I hated that you had a plan and I didn't. I hated how every time you talked about paint colors, I heard a verdict about my life. I told myself I'd put it back before you even noticed. That makes it worse, not better, I know." "It does," I said, "but honesty makes it less permanent." I slid a copy of the note into a large envelope. "The payments are small enough to be real and big enough to cost you something. If you can't make one, you tell me a week in advance with a plan. Not a story, a plan." He nodded. "Deal." We shook hands in a way that felt weirdly formal for people who learned to ride bikes on the same cul-de-sac. Then we walked to our cars. He didn't hug me. I didn't ask him to. At home, I pinned a photocopy of the note behind the magnet that held up my condo mood board. It looked like a watermark for my future. This was the thing that made space for it. 2 days later, the bank posted a provisional credit for half the disputed amount. The email said pending investigation and may be revoked, which read to me like, "Breathe, but don't sprint." It was enough to make me believe my porch light might turn back on. That weekend, I met with a loan officer at a credit union who spoke mortgage the way my dad speaks baseball. She said, "Underwriters care about patterns. You've got consistency, savings, and an explanation for the blip. Keep documentation, keep your utilization low, and keep those boundaries." "I plan to," I said, and then I did a thing that felt strange and right. I took my condo list off the fridge and put it in a folder labeled Soon, Not Someday. Sometimes you save your future by moving it 2 inches to the left. The first repayment hit my account on a Tuesday at 8:04 a.m. It was 40% of Ryan's gig check, documented exactly as the note required, with a subject line that read, "Payment 1. Thank you for boundaries." I stared at the notification and felt a tiny bolt of something that wasn't joy so much as structural integrity returning to a load-bearing wall. It wasn't the money. It was the proof. Mom invited me over for dinner and made chicken piccata, like when we were kids, and she had 3 good recipes and made them as a promise. She hugged me long and said, "I'm learning too." Dad handed me a letter with his loopy engineer's handwriting, a list of things he was proud of that included your spreadsheets, your stubbornness, and your soft heart that you're learning to carry without dropping. "I'm not cutting my brother off," I told them at the table. "I'm cutting off the role I played that made this mess possible. I can love him across a boundary." Dad squeezed my shoulder. "We can learn to, too." Ryan started sending me screenshots of job apps with green check marks once a week, a thing the note didn't require, but the grown-up in him did. Twice, he asked for a 1-week extension on a partial sum. Each time, he sent the plan and then the proof. Each time, I replied, "Received," and not, "I'm proud of you," because I wanted the approval calibrated to deeds, not drafts. When he made a full payment early, I typed it. proud, and meant it. On my end, I became boring in the way people who achieve big, quiet goals do. I batch cooked. I unsubscribed from store emails that talked to me like we were best friends. I repurposed a weekend into a freelance project that paid like a mid-range sofa and bought me back a month on my timeline. The bank's investigation concluded with a split decision. One transfer counted as authorized device used, customer logged in previously, the other as unauthorized external link. The provisional credit on the second one stuck. The first did not. It stung, and then it didn't. I had a plan and a note and a spine. 3 months after the notary, the condo market hiccuped the way it does in early fall, and the place with the midnight pancakes suddenly looked less theoretical. I booked a call with the loan officer, sent fresh pay stubs, and opened my folder labeled Soon. The pre-approval this time felt different, not just a number, but a mirror that reflected a person who could hold a line while holding love. I didn't rush a closing just to prove I could. I built the reserve that the underwriter would like to see. I raised my middle score by 10 points because I kept my utilization under 10% and paid attention to dates the way bakers watch ovens. I let time be a proof of concept. The night I got the updated pre-approval, I drove to the quiet neighborhood and parked across from the diner. A couple in their 70s split pancakes at a corner booth. A teenager refilled ketchup bottles without looking. A man in a mechanic's shirt counted dollar bills into a tip jar. Ordinary people doing ordinary things in a city that mostly asks you to keep going. I texted Ryan a photo of the sign. He replied with a thumbs up, and then a minute later, a typed sentence. I'm on payment 4 tomorrow. I know it's not your burden to clap for me, but I'm clapping for you. I texted back, thank you. Then I added, I'm clapping for both of us, not for what we were, for what we're learning to be.